Hey there, all you creepers and reapers. Welcome to another episode of the Femme Fatalities. I'm your co-hostess, Anna, and I am here with...
Hey, Grieflings and Frightlings, it's Margaret, and Anna and I think we are going to go to the boardwalk tonight. There is a great carousel that I love. What do you think?
That's right, we're taking a trip down memory lane through Santa Carla, and we hope that you guys enjoy this. Before we get into it too much, there are some triggers. So obviously, we're still working on our vampire series, and we're talking about The Lost Boys. If you grew up in the 80s or 90s, you have to have seen this movie. It's like a requirement. It's very nostalgic, but there is some blood, vampire activity, hellhounds, but nothing happens to the dogs. Also, familial breakdown of relationships. I actually really enjoy this. It's not a trigger for me, but it could be a trigger for someone else. That a widower getting back into the dating game, divorce, lifestyle obstruction, young adolescent love and idealism, child theft, missing persons. What else?
I think you've covered it all. Teenage boydom, I think,
Yeah.
is the main theme in this. Like rewatching it and just looking
Yeah.
at Star and her choices. She's like, girl, what are you thinking?
Right? Yeah, I agree. But I think it's a great movie. It's very nostalgic. If you love the vampire genre and you've not seen this, run. Don't walk. I mean, burst into bats, go get it, whatever you need to do. Turn into fog, smoke out, get it, whatever you need to do to see this film. I think it's great. It's a wonderful, just very very 80s movie. The characters are all great. A lot of the characters are very enjoyable. They're very likable. And we've been talking about several films that really don't have a lot of likable characters. So I'm quite excited to talk about this one. Um, and it's fun. And I love the fact, just to kind of jump right into the most random part of the movie, that Sam is a very unique kid, right? We know that he probably doesn't fit in. And he meets the Frog Brothers, and they're kind of unique too. And initially they don't care for each other, but then they really bond. And I enjoyed the comic book brothers bonding.
Yes, and I love how you touch on Sam's character, and he feels like he is almost a gateway character
Mm-hmm.
for more non-gender conforming, more on the LGBTQ plus spectrum. Sam, this is the 80s again, so
Mm-hmm.
there's not a lot, and Sam fits that like ambiguous. You're like, I bet if this movie was remade, he
Mm-hmm.
might be a transgender kiddo or a gender non-conforming kiddo, because he is so. I think he's got a big poster of like Rob Lowe like on his
Yeah.
wall, and I was like, okay, like Sam's character is pushing some 80s boundaries, and I'm guessing that there was a lot of LGBTQ kiddos at the
Mm-hmm.
time watching this film in the 80s being like, yes, like,
Right?
yeah,
Well, his sense of style alone. I mean, I love his wardrobe. I love Sam. And, rest in peace, Corey Haim. Um, well, of course, we'll probably talk about the Coreys in a little bit, but rest in peace to him. I just really enjoy his character. And, Michael's kind of the jerky older brother, right?
Mhm.
We all had one, or we all had a friend who had one. And he's exactly what's to be expected. He doesn't want to hang out with Sam. He doesn't want to hang around the house. This is even before he vamps out, right? He's not doing his chores, doesn't really want to listen. He's bored. He has to figure out what to do the whole summer before school starts. So very typical of what I believe to be a senior in high school.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree. And then we get into his nemesis, I guess, David.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember, I believe it was on a podcast, but there's this fan theory that David is Ace from Stand By Me.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yes.
love that fan theory because
Mm-hmm.
just how Kiefer Sutherland plays these two roles,
Yeah.
and David is he's kind of a jerk. Like he's the leader of the Vamps, and I find him, I
Mhm.
don't know about you, more likable than Michael because I feel like
Mhm.
we know what we're getting from David.
Yeah.
Michael's kind of this jerk. He's that adolescent. I don't know why he starts dating him because he's blaming her
Mhm.
for all of his problems. I'm thinking of
Yeah.
the scene where he's like, "You let me drink that blood," and I'm
Mhm.
thinking,
And
"No,
she's
she
like, I
didn't. Who
warned
told
you.
you?" Yeah,
Yeah.
like
Yeah, like part of me now as like an adult woman, when I watch that movie, I want Star to be like, I told you not to drink that. I don't know why you drank that. You know what I mean? But she's just like, oh, I don't know how to help you. I'm just like, oh, I know how to help.
yes.
Make him figure it out himself. No. Um, but, and then of course we have the rest of David's crew. And it's always just so funny that like there's like little laddie. He's just there and we never really find out how he became part of that because we know that there's a missing persons report. He's on the milk carton, so he obviously has a family of humans that cares about him and is looking for him. So I'm wondering if it might be, we talked about Near Dark on the series as well. It might be the case of like May and Caleb, where maybe they didn't finish the job, so then he's like partially vamped out now. I love how Max has this kind of sense of family with David's crew, even though he also despises them, which I feel like a lot of fathers relate to their teenagers in
Mhm.
that way, regardless of gender or gender identity.
Yes. Oh, I love how you touch on, yeah, like he has this sense of, again, like you're saying, like being a dad, wanting his sons to have a mother, to be better behaved, and David's rebelling. And again, the movie does not tell us like how they're all related
Mm-hmm.
to Max, if Max turned them, or we're guessing Max
Yeah.
must have turned one of them. And I'm with you. I'm wondering if Laddie was somebody's first victim and then they just
Like,
didn't do it right. And so then
yeah, or
Laddie
they
just
couldn't do it
became.
because he was a kid, you know? Well, and then, like, I feel like Max, right? He has some sort of familial instinct. He wants a family. And, like, okay, let's say that he turned David first. Maybe David was working at his store. And, like, I come up with all these backstories in my mind.
Mhm.
And he had, like, not so great life at home because we see no missing posters with him or any of his crew. So Max turns him, and then he's like, oh, well, what about my friends? And then that's how that whole thing kind of starts. And then Max is like, oh, crap, I got to make sure these kids are taken care of, but I'm going to let them do what they want, too.
Oh, I really appreciate that. Like that's such a wonderful theory. And I think you touch on as viewers so often we crave enough backstory to help us
Mm-hmm.
to relate to the characters. And there's not a lot of backstory with any of them. We get most of the backstory with
Mm-hmm.
Sam and Michael, and we know mom's newly divorced, and so they're moving to Santa Carla to be with her kooky
I love
dad.
love Grandpa. That's
Yeah.
the best scene of the entire movie is the end when he's like, the one thing I hate about Santa Carla is all the vampires. And it's just, it makes the movie, imagine like being like a teenager or a young adult when that movie first came out. Because I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I know that we primarily were children watching it on repeat on TV. You know, we weren't of age to go see it when it came out. And I don't even know if I think I was alive then. Um, not that I was like undead before. Let me clarify that. But um, imagine being in the theater and then that ending. And I just think it's so funny because you have these hugely violent death scenes that are super creative. And you know, you talk about like slashers now that are creative. Lost Boys was creative genius because it had a little bit of gore, but nothing with a super gross out factor. but all the kills were creative.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that. Like, it's so unique in that way, and it's so unto itself. But then you have all of these, like, kills, the vamps are gone, and then just Grandpa being funny, and it's over. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a delight. It's delicious, it's fun, it's all the things. Um, I love when they go in to get the holy water from the church and the Frog Brothers are just like, yeah. It's just, there's so much nostalgia and fun built into this movie. It's, if you love the movie, you love it. You will drop whatever you're doing if it is on TV and watch it. Like, it's just one of those movies.
I think it's, like, talking about, like, we think about, like, 80s movies, and it is a quintessential 80s film. You've got
Mm-hmm.
the story arc that a lot of 80s films had. You have your
Mm-hmm.
protagonist and what's going to happen, and that montage scene with the music where they're riding their bikes and they're
Yes.
going to the church. Like, this is just, so for the
Yeah.
nostalgic factor, you're like, yeah, like, this is, it's a fun
Yes.
movie.
I will admit that sometimes I listen to the soundtrack in my car on my commute to work.
It's
Um,
a great soundtrack. How
it
many people
is.
don't hear certain songs and they can picture certain scenes? And I
Yeah.
mean, it's just like the memes, like when they got the saxophone guy, and they're like, yeah, this is what
Yeah.
like every 80s horror needs, like a spandex wearing saxophone player just thinks it.
He looks the same too. I went to a
Mhm.
horror convention a few years ago and I was like, he's just a little bit older, but he looks, Tim Capella, I think is he's what he's called. He looks exactly the same. And the friend I was with at the horror convention, they're like, he's hot. I'm like, go ahead. You know, but I'm like, he's old enough to be your grandfather, but you know, and then my friend was like, well, that's what I like. I was like, there you go, have fun. But
Mhm.
it was amazing that he looks so similar. And of course,
Mhm.
like, I can't hear Run DMC and Aerosmith without immediately thinking the bonfire scene.
Yes.
And that song was playing on my radio one day at work. And one of my colleagues walked by and they're like, what's that song remind you of? And in my brain, I was like, and I was just like, fun. um, obviously, well, anyone who's listened, you know, I have a whole other life that's not completely horror based. I have to sometimes hold back a little bit. But
Yeah.
most of my colleagues already know that I'm a Queen of Darkness, and they're okay with that. But it's great. Like you said, the soundtrack's great. The fact that both Corys are in it, awesome. You've got Kiefer Sutherland, freaking like Jason Patrick, Bill, right from Bill.
Alex Winter.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Alex Walker. Um, and then this is terrible. Billy, I can't remember his last name, but I met him and he's really, really nice. I met him at a horror convention, and then the other gentleman whose name escapes me as well. But I mean, it's a great cast, and even the actor who played Grandpa, the mom, she's in so many movies. She's a great actress. Of course,
Diane
anytime I see
Lee.
her, yeah, I mean, even in Edward Scissorhands, when I see her, I'm like, glass she has a great range, though. Um, and it's just, it's fun. It's a blast. It really
Yeah.
is.
Such a great movie. So who do you most relate to?
Well, it's a toss up here. I would say Nanook and also Thorn.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because Thorn is very sweet, but Thorn is also a hellhound, and if you mess with someone that Thorn protects and cares about, you're going to have a really bad day. But Thorn's just doing their job. And the
Mm-hmm.
same with Nanook. If you see that between Sam and Michael when Sam's in the bathtub and Michael starts to have bloodthirst and Nanook bites Michael to protect Sam. And I just, I like that. I mean, I love all the human characters, but I love that there are pets in the film and they are active in the roles of the characters. they're not threatened, but rather their protective instinct is very strong. And I enjoy that because we don't often see that, particularly in vampire films. Like witches, warlocks, wizards, we know that they have a familiar. Um, if there's lycanthropy, we've already got a werewolf, but oftentimes they have some sort of animal um, as well. And just a lot of other creatures, like even like the creature from the Black Lagoon, we assume that like they're chummy with the fish. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So it was just kind of fun to see a vampire movie that they have pets.
Yes, I love that you like touch on that too and go back to the old vampire lore. Since we're doing this vampire thing, I watched like the original Dracula, Nosferatu, and modern films have forgotten that there was a wolf, there was a dog,
Mm-hmm.
there was some four-legged
Yeah,
creature that accompanied. And I
yeah,
think in a couple of the films, they're like, oh, it's the werewolf. They always come with the vampires,
mm-hmm.
and that lore has been forgotten,
Oh,
that vampires had their
mm-hmm.
hellhounds to take care of
Yeah.
them.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's even in the song Thriller that
Hmm.
Vincent Price talks about the hounds of hell. Like
Yes.
an imperative part of the story, and you're right, it gets so forgotten. Well, who would you relate to the most in the film?
I'm gonna go with Mom, Diane Weiss's
Yeah.
character, just trying to connect and doing my best and worried. I could
Yeah.
see myself running out on a date because my daughter called me
Hmm.
screaming, and even
Yeah.
sitting down and being like, "We're not connecting. What's going on?"
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, I
Yes.
think that she's a great mom. Like her character, she's very caring and loving, and just she's really, I think she does a bang up job. Like if you look at her character, she has to move in with her dad because she got divorced, and he even says, Lucy, I've never met a woman who's, not bettered their situation by getting divorced until yours. And like within a very short span of time, right? Because summer break is like 3 months. So
Hmm.
she ends up getting a job. She's caring for her boys. She starts a relationship. Like that's a lot going on in her life
Yes.
without the vampire context.
Yes. I agree. Like she's just there doing, again, she's a likable character.
Mhm.
And if we go back to like this movie, how it brings in like the hounds of hell and then these
Mhm.
vampire tropes that we don't always get like inviting the vampire in. The whole
Yeah.
dinner scene with like the garlic and the
The-
bad breath and
yes.
all these things that you're like, yes,
Yeah,
like this is classic vampires.
absolutely. And that's what makes it so great too. It has a lot of classic facts and characteristics, and it is a classic movie, and it's so nostalgic. I mean, this one, depending on the age of your kids and what they're exposed to, like if you're a Gen Xer, you're a millennial, even like an older Gen Z, like if you grew up watching this movie, watch it with your kids. It's fun. I can tell you, I still watch it with my mom maybe once a
Mhm.
year. Um, it's just our thing. She let me watch it when I was little, and I loved it, and I still love it. Do you watch it with
Yes.
your kiddos?
I don't I do not know. I know, like, I've watched it several times. I cannot recall watching it with her. I'm going to guess that we have at some point in her life. And if she's listening and I haven't, I will definitely report back and let you know that she
Okay.
said. But I'm guessing that we've had to watch this at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, okay, I have another question. In terms
Mhm.
of the vampire test, is there one that you would definitely try to use if you suspected someone was a vamp?
I think I'd go for the mirror one. And I think that's just because I think that that's like so
Mhm.
cool and a given. Like we see, like you don't know, like if a vampire's at my door and somebody else invites him in, then now what am
Yeah.
I going to do? How about you? Like, what's your vampire test?
So I think if I had to pick one from the movie, I think the garlic one because I just think it would be fun. But if I could make my own up because I worked for so long in the jewelry industry, I'd be like, oh, look at this silver ring I just designed. Here, hold it and see if anything happened. What about you? Do you have like a test that you would just like implement that's not in the movie?
No, I don't. That is such a wonderful question. Now I'm gonna have to think about that and see if there's, yeah.
Awesome. And also, okay, when people come to your house that you don't know, do you ever invite them in?
I think naturally I say, come in. How about you? I think that's like, well, because I have to go get my dog. So I have
Yeah.
two big hellhounds. So when
Oh,
somebody
yeah.
comes to my house, I can't invite them in right away because I have to put the hellhounds up. So then
Yeah.
I come back and I open the door and I say, come in to let them know
Mhm.
or that I've got the dogs under control. How about you? Do you invite people in?
Um, it depends actually. Like if it's a friend of a friend, I'm like, oh yeah, come on in. But I think sometimes I'll just open the door and be like, oh yeah, food's on the table. So I don't know if that really constitutes an invitation. Oh, that's a good topic. Like what constitutes an invitation versus not in the vamp
Mm-hmm.
world. And also if it's daylight, then it's fine because they're not out. It's moot. But at nighttime.
Well, they'll let us know, right? Like in a lot of vampire movies, if somebody doesn't
Hmm.
say, come in,
Yeah.
we see that,
Hmm.
and let the right one in when he says, well, what happens if I don't invite you in? And remember, she walks in and she like
Yeah.
starts bleeding from like, yeah,
Hmm. That's right.
yeah.
Oh my gosh. That totally gives new meaning to that old rock song that's like, you're invited, but your friend can't come. Because, all right. And I know, like, I, I feel like, okay, both Corys are in this movie. I do want to just mention my, my adoring love for Corey Feldman, especially things that are coming into light right now, in the celebrity world. Um, I don't want to go into a whole tirade or kind of a devotive speech, but suffice to say, Corey was right. If you know something is going on and you believe so strongly about it, speak up. Because if you don't speak up, no one else might. So keep at it. He had so many things happen to him while he was speaking out against Hollywood, and he was right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think just if you sense that something is going on with someone that you know and care about, ask them. Don't let it go. Because if you let it go, it could continue. You don't know what else might happen. If you feel adamantly about something that is going on and you want to better society and better environments and better groups and systems and subsystems, speak up. You
Mm-hmm.
do have a right to have a voice, and don't ever forget that.
Yes, thank you so much for addressing that and encouraging people, yes, speak up because, like you're saying, Corey kept trying to speak up and he was ridiculed because he is an interesting person. And so people used that against him and not said, okay, yeah, he's an interesting person and these things happened to him.
Mhm.
And I often think he's interesting and how did what happened to him impact him? We look at like Drake Bell coming out as
Mhm.
well about what happened to him. And then again, people are just like judging him and
Yeah.
missing some bad stuff really happened
Mhm.
to him. So again, find somebody to talk to, like listeners, viewers. There are people out there. You don't have to hold this on your own. And you get to be eccentric and interesting and all those
Yeah,
things and well adjusted. And maybe nothing bad has ever happened to you. Or you can be those things and still carry a lot of trauma and need additional support.
absolutely. And just know that there is support out there. We remind you every episode that our Instagram and social media pages have lots and lots of helpful links. We've got, the 988, the 988 line, as well as a lot of warm lines, soft lines, all sorts of contacts, therapy group suggestions, counselor company suggestions. anything that you're curious about that maybe you're not seeing on our YouTube or hearing through our podcast, please feel free to email or message us. We are more than happy to provide suggestions as appropriate. That is what we are here for.
Yes, to support and inspire, hopefully.
Mm-hmm. And also, get you in touch with the horror genre because it's
Mm-hmm.
awesome. Mm-hmm.
Yes, the horror
Yep,
genre helps us have conversations and talk about stuff that's happening. Like, yeah.
absolutely. Well, and it also has inspired me to take a break and get a sody pop and some double stuffed Oreos out of the fridge. So, while I do that, everybody crawl back into your coffins. Don't forget to get a good day's rest. And you know what else you shouldn't forget?
Like, subscribe, and follow.
Darn tootin'. We'll see you next time.
Yes, thanks for watching and listening.